This is episode 4. My name is Mike, and this is The Rookie Hunter. If you're returning to the show, we appreciate you joining us. If you're new to the show, this podcast is all about new hunters and their experiences in the backcountry of British Columbia. Today on the show, we talk to our good friend Cory, and he shares his experiences from his first 2 years of hunting. If you'd like to connect with us, our email address is therookieHunterPodcast@gmail.com. We're always looking for show ideas, suggestions, and hey, if we say something wrong, feel free to correct any information that we're putting out there. You can also reach us on Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. Thanks again for joining us for episode 4 of the Rookie Hunter Podcast. We've been talking about getting in a special guest for a while. And if we've mentioned our friend Cory Davy quite a few times. He hasn't heard the podcast yet, so he doesn't know the shit we were saying about him. But he's finally here. Kel, what's on tap today?
Oh man, you always surprise me with this question. It's actually over by you.
Oh, it's right by me.
Yeah, it's a Tofino. What is it?
Tofino Brewing Company. It's a blonde ale.
Yeah. So Vancouver Island.
Not too shabby. We've been doing lots of Vancouver Island beers for the last few here.
Yeah, I can't complain.
Cool. So Kelly, you introduced me to Cory, and it was through the core program where we first met. We've already sort of explained that story, but maybe just explain how you guys connected. And
well, I guess we connected through our wives.
Yeah,
right?
It's one of those fortunate ones where if we choose to go out hunting for a weekend, the wives can play and
they can hang out. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's what happened because I think I met Cory. We were going on a hike, and my wife had arranged it, and so I think we met that day. But that was also the day. It was just after Mike had talked about taking this hunting course and doing all this kind of stuff. And I remember we had discussed that you were actually going to take the hunting course with some friends who I think might have backed out. But at that point I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, I met this Cory guy and he's going on the course.
Yeah.
So I know Mike and I want to do it. And it was kind of, I think that's kind of what pulled it together for the two of us anyway.
I almost wonder that if you hadn't signed up to do that thing, I'm not sure if Kelly and I really would have actually followed through on it. So you're in some way responsible for us getting into that.
You kind of tied in there. Gave us some momentum.
Yeah, that was the last weekend. I think you could have done it in order to hunt that season. So it was actually...
What did you think of the Core and Pal program?
I thought it was really good. I mean, in order to... I think we dedicated, what was it, a weekend?
Yeah, I think it was 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday or something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, pretty in and out, and to get your core and your pal through that was really nice. I thought that particular guy was very educated and didn't sugarcoat a whole ton of it. And I'll never forget, I always thought of hunting as just filling the freezer. And I think it was you, Kelly, that said, the camaraderie and things like that. And you realize in a season that, the odds of, getting meat your first year and having enough to fill your freezer, the odds are a lot slimmer than you think. So then it really did come down to camaraderie and getting out with your buddies and having those days. And
it pretty much is an excuse to go out and drink beer and hang out with your buddies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
those early mornings, but
you get to have we've talked about this a couple times, but you get to go out there and hike and see animals and hang out. Doesn't really get much better than that.
Yeah, I think for Kelly and I, it was kind of the same thing. As the thing that really got us hooked is being up super early in the morning and seeing, like we were talking about, seeing owls like flying down and getting mice out in the field like right as the sun is coming up, and you see all this cool stuff that otherwise you'd be in bed sleeping. You know what I mean? So you start to see all these cool things, and that's more of what's happening when you're hunting. Is you're out there observing things more so than actually killing anything, especially when you're just learning, right? So
yeah, it's it's always exciting when you see something come through your binoculars that you can watch for a few minutes here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to show you guys a spot this year that I think we can have some success in, but can't tell our viewers that one.
No. No.
Yeah, we have
gotta
to be careful what we say on here.
It's really funny. Like, that's one of the hardest things with, I think, rookie hunters is finding a spot that on your own, it's very challenging to find a spot where you're going to have success that, you know, isn't overpopulated. And then the other thing is, you know, there's not too many people that are willing to share their particular spot. So it's a real, you know, what do they call those, quagmire of a situation? Because it's tough to get in that way, I find. Like, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, yeah, it'd be great to go out hunting, but that would mean for him to show me his spot, so he absolutely avoids actually going out hunting. But it's part of the challenge, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I spent hours, even just last night, I was on Google Earth, and I just sit there trying to, okay, like 2 to 4 miles in, how far is that? So I'm like measuring all these, okay, from this trailhead, it's 4 miles to get to here. I start from like a 30,000 foot view. And I'm like, okay, well, this looks like a kind of a valley or a drainage, right? So maybe I'll look there. And then you can kind of start plotting all this stuff. And then you realize just how big that area is. Like, the closer and closer you start getting to the ground and measuring all these things. And it's like, and that's not even actually getting your boots on the ground in person and walking there.
Right.
Like, it always seems so much bigger in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, to just try to find spots on your own and use technology and stuff like that, it's pretty tough. I find I spin around in circles.
Yeah. Do you guys have that Hunter Buddy app?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I had that this year. I just found out about it near the end of this season, and it probably would have gotten me a deer kind of situation, just because I didn't know if I had a LEH draw for a doe, but I wasn't sure if I had gotten into the particular region where the draw was for. And so I saw, you know, a doe and was uncertain. I felt like I wasn't quite into the region 3 yet, and, you know, drove past it, literally, you know, driving out, see the sign saying you're in region 3, and I, you know, cursed at myself because I didn't get anything that day. And then find out through a friend that Hunter Buddy will actually say, you know, you're in region 3. You don't have to be linked into a network or anything. It just has it via satellite, I guess. But
super useful.
yeah, I would have been. I was pretty pissed off after that. You know, when you waste a tank of gas and
No doubt.
So how much did you get out during your first season? So I guess that would have been 2014 when we got our license, right?
Yeah, the first season I probably got out probably about 7-8 times.
Oh, okay.
And I went basically truck hunting with my dad for a weekend and didn't love it. I mean, you get a stiff back at the end of the day, and you're just driving around lots, and it can be quite boring. Although in that particular area we were shooting lots of grouse and stuff, which was, you know, keeps you occupied and fun. And and then went out a couple days with my brother-in-law, and you know, he spotted some whitetails for us and managed to shoot one in the group. And then just another couple days went out with Kelly in a spot and froze our bag off for a full day at -20, and then realized all the mistakes we made in a day.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, should we go over a couple of those?
Might as well, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, we were kind of it was almost like we were looking over a ridge to a field down below, right? It was pretty sweet spot.
Yeah, so one of those times where a friend actually gave a spot up, and asked that we keep it relatively or very secret. They had built a hut and, you know, basically a lot of whitetails and would walk through. For us, unfortunately, I think it was pretty early in the rut, so there wasn't a whole ton of activity for us. But that was a lot in part because we were making all the right mistakes to not see a deer, I guess.
I had the call going.
We had the call going, but
wasn't
doing
much.
What I found out later is that in our particular spot, they would have walked in behind us, sniffed us out, and then not, and then taken off. What I would assume.
Yeah.
And
so I actually made that mistake twice.
Nice.
For listeners who have heard episode 1 and 2, I put a deer behind me with a call in another area.
Yeah,
I did the same thing up there. Well, if there were deer around.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think in order for that to work, it sounds like it's got to be the perfect scenario with wind and with, backing up onto a mountain or something along those lines where we were on a bit of a ridge. But it was funny going out the following time with a guy that, takes a deer out of that area every time. I'd say something to him and he was shh, utter silence the whole time. So whereas Kelly and I were gabbing, and I think he was doing push-ups at one point to keep warm and jumping jacks. And
I'm like, I'm just going to head out of the shed. I got to do some one-leg squats or something. It was cold though.
That was, I think we were minus 20.
Yeah.
And
that's Celsius.
The following time I actually took sleeping bags and just sat in a sleeping bag the whole day, which actually helped out quite a bit.
Nice.
But
yeah, so that's more of an ambush hunt, right? And I know maybe we can talk about that in a later episode too, is the one style that we've done a lot of is trying to spot and stalk and hunting basically boots on the ground and moving a lot, and Mike loves that because
I can't sit still for more than 5
minutes. He doesn't
minutes,
sit still, but at the same time, while that's challenging and rewarding, I'm also thinking being able to be patient enough and have the mental power to sit there and wait because that deer is coming and pull it off. There's also a lot of skill and involved in that too.
I do find I found in that particular scenario, and it could have been because it was the first year, but that buck fever sets in so much harder than the stalking and stuff, just because you're waiting in silence all day, and then finally something comes along that you can move on, so your heart is just racing.
Yeah
Exactly.
We started off doing more sort of sitting and waiting in that first spot that we started going to, and I always feel like if we go through the whole day of just sitting there and not seeing anything, I was almost depressed, what the fuck am I doing out here? I've just wasted not wasted, but you kind of feel or I feel anyways, when I'm out walking, I sort of feel I increase my odds a little bit more. And especially where we were hunting up behind your place. Sorry, Kel's passing me beer here. More important things. We would see quite a few deer in a day just walking around, whereas if we stuck in one area, we might not see anything. So I always feel I'm missing opportunities if I'm not moving around, but that's mainly because I just can't sit still for more than an hour. I'm done after an hour, basically, but
it's hard. Otherwise, you're just in your head, and
yeah, exactly.
An hour feels like 8. So.
Yeah. I guess that's where, if you can scout and you have lots of action in that area, like I think was the case with this guy kind of letting us use his spot there. We didn't get lucky, but at the same time, we kind of thought, I don't mind sitting here because there's a good chance something's going to happen. Maybe the timing was a little off, but
that's the thing though, is if you know that there is stuff there, then it's a different situation. But when you're just kind of picking a spot and sitting there and hoping for the best, it's a different scenario. But I don't know if we talked about this already, but having your trail cam is a pretty big advantage because at least we can leave that out there for a couple of weeks and then come back and determine if there is actually stuff around. And
because in the early fall, you're not getting to see those tracks to know that they're there, and you're just going off a hunch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we. I was fortunate enough this year to get a group draw up in Smithers. So the unfortunate part of it was I realized afterwards that there was no open buck season the week before our draw started.
Oh no!
So we saw a lot of heads cut off or carcasses around that week, but it was very challenging just to sit there because it was crusty and we didn't have trail cams set up prior to that. Mm-hmm. While we did see some tracks because we didn't know the snow hadn't come in a week or so, it was tough to tell whether those tracks were a day old or 3 days old or what the deal was. So sitting in a spot in that situation was and it was very challenging. So
did you go up there with guys that knew the area at all, or
no? It was actually they knew the area actually, but sorry, I didn't mean to contradict there, but they knew the area. They were rookie hunters as well. I mean, they neither of them had ever shot at anything bigger than a rabbit, basically. So, but my sister-in-law was a biologist, so she actually tracked quite a bit of moose and and things like that. So it was, they were pretty good at identifying moose tracks and things, but unfortunately, we didn't have any success. Yeah.
So that was this previous season?
That was this fall. Yeah, we there was one day where I thought we had a really good shot, and it snowed like 6 or 7 inches. We decided that was the day that we were gonna get a chance, and drove up first thing. We were there first light, and I got all turned around on some tracks, and by the time I got myself sorted out, it was light, and I'm walking up on a bed basically, like, so where the moose was sleeping, and I found out in a quick hurry that they zigzagged all over the forest. Like, they don't walk in a straight line,
right?
And you put yourself in these positions where you think they're gonna walk through, but I didn't see them walk through one of those once. Like when we were when I was sitting in the days prior waiting for hopefully something to come through a marsh or whatever. When I was tracking this thing, I didn't see him walk through a marsh once. Like, it was.
It always seems like you expect them to be in a certain area, so that's where you're washing. But oftentimes they're up behind you or in like the total opposite direction that you think they're going to be. So it's always kind of opens your eyes up a little bit when you realize, like, I shouldn't just assume that they're going to be down there because there's a game trail or whatever. Mm-hmm. You got to be watching all over the place, which you found out too when that deer came up right beside you at like 30 yards or whatever.
Yeah.
Soft spot. That was a touchy subject.
It is kind of. Oh man,
it's hard like thinking about all the ones that got away though. Yeah. Like, that's the worst.
It's like it was like a 5-point whitetail that we were calling in. I was using my call again, but this time it actually worked. But it did put the deer behind me. But the thing was about 30 yards away. And we kind of just locked eyes, and I could see him, and I thought, I got to do something. Like, I'm in a staring contest with this guy. So I thought, I didn't have my rifle on me, didn't have anything ready, because we were all looking down at a clear cut, like 200 yards down. There's a little bit of a stream, and we all pictured these deer walking there. So we were all prepared for that, but nobody was prepared for the deer that was 30 yards to the side. So
classic.
Yeah.
Nice. Was there anything else from your first season? Anything that stood out as? Yeah.
The biggest thing that stood out, and you always want to take something away, I guess, at the end of a day. was just getting a comfortable resting spot, or, feeling comfortable in a shot. For example, like we were in the same spot that Kelly and I went out, and, a buck walked through, and I didn't feel like I was in a comfortable position, but I thought I had, the crosshairs on him, and, I took 3 shots at this thing and missed every time.
Oh, no.
So at that time, like, I was with my dad, who, he's shot some deer, but at the end of the day, he's relatively novice, I would say. And I went out with my brother-in-law a day later, and again, same scenario. A deer came through, and I took a shot at it and missed. So, I was ready to give up hunting at that point. Like, I was, I'm awful at this. This isn't for me. I suck, because you put in those days, and the odds of getting a deer every day are next to none. But so he stood me up and kind of talked me through, like, getting a comfortable spot, feeling comfortable with it, and then making the shot. But yeah, fortunately after that, I hit it on the first one, because, but yeah, it was pretty impactful, just, losing the opportunity on a deer, and then realizing that it was all in your head, kind of thing, just trying to rush it. And I think you do have more time than we always think.
Right.
So yeah, that was just pretty impactful.
I think it was the same thing for Kelly and I. We already talked about our first opportunity that didn't turn out so well, but I think we felt really rushed as well. Like, it's only going to be a couple of seconds where we've got this chance.
Yeah.
But I think if we had waited another minute or two and sort of, but you don't know.
We could have waited a long time, I think.
I think you just get so impatient.
Yeah.
And it happens to me probably once a year, like, even as trying to stalk these 2 does. And if I just probably waited in the same spot and watched them walk and get into a sight line, I probably would have shot the one. But I got impatient and went after them, and then you get at their tree level and you can't see them.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, you live and learn, I guess.
Totally, yeah. So your second season, what are the highlights of that one?
The second season, went out to the Kootenays, and was fortunate. Like, again, you live and learn, I guess. Out there, they've got a 2 white-tailed doe limit, so you can actually shoot 2 white-tailed does in a day, basically. So we went out with a group, and the first day, it was opening day, so we were seeing them everywhere. Like, my buddy was riding in the passenger seat. He shot a doe, and as we're kind of waiting, the doe that the other one was with was just hanging around. So I ultimately shot that one, and it was like, it wasn't a huge doe, so I got picky and realized, like, after day 1 that these things are impossible to see, because they're smart little buggers, and they realize all their friends are going down and these trucks are taking them down. So I didn't see a single one the rest of the day, and was passing up other ones on the first day. So it was it was funny. I mean, you just learn. So if I were to go out again, it'd be hopefully get your limit and then be done for the weekend. Right. But and then the second, I got another little spiker muley, which for me was, like, out of the deer I've shot, was probably the most gratifying, because I saw it by myself, and walked over a hill and found it again. Basically, I couldn't get a great shot when I initially saw it, and didn't want to risk it. So he walked over a hill, and I ultimately found him, and he linked in with another group of deer, and basically identifying a spike was a little bit scary, just because
Right.
he's hanging out with some does, and I didn't necessarily, you're wondering if it's a branch behind him or if it's actually
So many things go through your head in those situations, man.
yeah, and you want to be ethical. You don't want to
Yeah, totally.
potentially shoot a doe, and he finally twisted his head, and I had him in the sight line, and identified him as a buck. But then he walked amongst the does again, so I lost him, and again took another minute and a half trying to be patient, and found him again, and then found a good resting spot, and all I could see was his neck. So I shot him in the neck, actually, and it went down right away, but there was a doe hanging out at the same time. So I'm looking at this doe trying to see if that's actually the buck. And all these things start racing through your head when you're solo. So I ended up walking up and having a huge relief, because it ended up being the buck, of course. And I called my brother-in-law up, and he had the horses in the trail, so we were able to get him and throw him in the satchel or whatever, or throw him over the horses. And it was funny though, because he came up and like, oh, did you mean to shoot him in the neck? Because he had his previous experiences with me, so it was pretty funny in that regard. But it was pretty gratifying, just because for the most part, other than we started at the bottom of the trail, and we all kind of went our separate ways, and for the most part did it on my own. So it was pretty gratifying in that sense, and it made it a lot more fun that way, I guess.
What did you think of field dressing the first time you went through that?
You know what? All but one time, I've been able to get a little bit of guidance from someone. The one time was a complete massacre. I butchered the thing. Like it was bad. But the last time it was funny, because it would be my brother-in-law's father was helping me with it, and he's pretty old school, and he eats the guts basically. So I almost felt I felt forced to take the liver, take the heart,
right,
and stuff, and actually barbecued up the heart for my wife that evening.
Nice.
How was it?
I wouldn't probably do it again. Like, just the texture was, it might be okay in a stir fry, I think, but I wouldn't eat it straight up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then same with the liver. Like you try it once. And
Yeah.
we tried doing a pate out of it, and it was okay, but
Nice.
yeah. What about you guys? Did you do any of that with yours?
We did grab the heart. I don't know where that ended up.
No, we didn't use it. I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there that will eat the liver and the heart. I think for me anyways, it's something that I'll have to grow into.
Yeah. And I think if we're actually out camping and we're set up somewhere, I think I'd be more likely to actually like cook something up on a campfire as far as the liver and the heart. Maybe just throw a bunch of onions and shit in tin foil and see what happens with it. But our situation, by the time we were done with that thing, I didn't even want to look at that fucking meat anymore, man. It was like...
You guys butchered it all yourself and everything,
yeah.
didn't you? Yeah.
And it went pretty well. We took our time. We had no idea. Well, I shouldn't say we didn't have any idea, but obviously without somebody there to kind of guide you through it, it's a bit intimidating. But I think
we did well.
We both watched a lot of YouTube videos and stuff beforehand, so the whole idea wasn't completely foreign to us. Yeah. So,
and I think there's really only so many ways you could do it. Like, it's almost hard to mess it up, because once you get the hide off, all the muscle groups are pieces, right?
Yeah.
So it just kind of depends on how much you want to break it down. Like you could quarter it and maybe just cut big roasts on it with multiple muscles on there. We actually went in and separated all the muscle groups, which
I found
once
it to
you
be
get in
pretty
there, it's not too
straightforward.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not bad. You put some newspaper on your kitchen table or whatever, and crack a 6-pack and
Go at her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. But and then you kind of wonder, how much is the butcher just skimming over, and stuff that he maybe doesn't throw into the ground or.
And I've heard that depending on who you go to or what time of year it is, you might not even get your deer back.
Mm-hmm.
Like you might get you get a whole bunch of guys dropping stuff off at once. And I think they have to wash the gear every time they process wild meat. Like if you brought it to Mission Meats or something like that. So it's I think that's why they charge a little bit extra for that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, they're going to try to make things efficient where they can, but I don't know. I've heard horror stories too of people that didn't even get their.
Oh, really? I've heard that with sausages and stuff.
Yeah.
They'll compile a bunch of different animals together, and they'll do that with the sausage. I haven't heard it so much with
like roasts and stuff.
Yeah, with steaks and burger and roast. Maybe burger, I could see that happening.
Yeah, I guess if anything ground like that, you might be more at risk. But
I think for the most part, the more stuff that we can do on our own, the better. And I actually enjoyed that part of it. I know most of the guys that my dad used to hunt with, and that they would basically just let a butcher deal with it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it would end up being sausages and stuff like that. But with the whitetail, I didn't want to do any of that stuff. I just wanted to actually try the meat for what it was, and it was fantastic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and Mike actually took a sausage making class recently.
I did at the Salted Brick.
Oh, did
downtown
you?
here.
Cool.
And it's pretty straightforward. And you can actually get a KitchenAid attachment. I think it's $120 for the grinder and the stuffer attachment in that. And it's not like you could do a whole whack of sausages. Like you'd probably burn out the motor on that thing at some point. But at least you can be doing small batches and then, eating those up within a week or something like that. And then you just make more because it's not a messy process and it's not too time consuming and it's pretty fun to do it. So I think the more involved you are with the process, the more attached you are to the meat and the less likely you are to waste it and all that kind of shit. Right. So
it's funny. The first year, I'm waking my wife up at 4:30 in the morning or, and dedicating this time, getting home late for, a dinner party that we're supposed to be at. And man, she was frustrated, but then we filled the freezer the first time. And this past season, I was like, yeah, go out. Just hopefully have some success. Like it was, it was funny because she loves it. Like, and mainly because of that attachment to the meat. She knows a story behind it. And, especially, going to a grocery now, beef is as expensive as it is, and maybe not as ethically
exactly
as it could be. But so it's funny that attachment goes a long way with the misses and the women. I find
it was exactly the same for us for the first year because we were going out, or I was anyways, like constantly as much as I could, and never getting anything right, and then finish off the season and still nothing. So Ashley and Bree were both getting to the same point. It's like, you guys better fucking get something one of these days because this is getting out of control.
Yeah.
But as soon as you do get something, it does change because they both love the meat and
I still feel like we're in that situation though. Like we got a whitetail. It was a doe. It was kind of small. It gave us some meat for sure. But we still, like for the amount of time and money you put in, it'd be nice to get a bigger animal or at least a couple, right?
Yeah.
Especially for a couple guys. But
I think each year we'll probably be more and more successful. We'll think harder about where we're going. Because even this last season, we went out less than we did the first time around, but just kind of had a better idea of what we were doing and where we should be going.
Yeah, concentrating your time, kind of where it matters.
Kelly didn't have binoculars for the first half of the
Yeah.
season, so
Yeah, we talked about that.
And the pair that I had were terrible. So
Yeah, Mike had old like beer bottles, and I didn't have any. So, yeah, that first season it was more of just getting out there with some gear, and
pretty much.
I was saying like my gun was stapled onto my shoulder because I didn't want to, unless somebody had eyes on something, I wasn't taking it off my shoulder to look through the scope, right? Because it's kind of a safety issue at that point. But
it's funny though, when you think the first year of hunting, you think of like the clothing, the gun. At no point was I like, oh, binoculars are a big part of this picture. And then I went out with a couple people and like, squinting, trying to see what they're looking at. And then, you realize in a quick hurry that they're pretty important.
Kelly and I did our top 3 for gear, and optics were number 1 for the same reason, because we started with just garbage for binoculars, and then when you actually have a good pair, it's like, oh my god, what have I been missing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and even I thought I spent a lot of money at the time. I got taken for a ride at a hunting store and said, I want to spend $300. I spent $500.
Nice.
But even then, I was like, I spent $800. It would have been even nice because you can just see that much more.
Yeah,
but
if you take care of them, you'll have them for a long time.
yeah,
so
exactly.
it's a good investment. Is there any other equipment that stands out to you that was sort of a game changer?
The optics were the big one. I still haven't quite figured out like the clothing aspect. Something waterproof would be nice, but again, it's if you had all the money in the world, it'd be a different story. But nothing really totally stands out. I'm excited about a new piece of equipment I got. Kelly, I think you've got like the tripod shooting rest, and a guy gave me a good deal on, it's the hiking stick basically that you can, drop down and use as a shooting rest. So I'm pretty excited to see how that'll turn out. I got it at the end of the season.
Nice.
But
is it like a mono stick or a monopod?
mono, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard mixed reviews, but I figure it's better than like a freestanding shot.
Oh, for sure.
Not that I would.
That's what I
take that.
had when I got my whitetail.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, if you can sort of get up against something too to rest on a little bit, it's even better. But I was sort of just like stuck it right into grass, and I was wobbling around quite a bit, especially because your adrenaline's going and stuff like that. So I think that's why my shot might have been a little bit off. I might have just been wobbling a little bit. But yeah, it's still way better than not having anything.
Yeah. Yeah, mine's I got the Bog Pod, I think it's called. And it's got 3 legs, and I was using it as a hiking stick too, but it's got this little Velcro thing, so you could tie all the legs together and it turns into like more of a longer walking stick. But if you have time to set that thing up with the 3 legs, you're definitely solid. It's just being in a position to actually do that, right?
Yeah.
So,
hey, hold up, dear. Let me just set this up for a second.
Although
Don't move.
And then you also have to set the levels too, right?
Yeah.
So if you're on a slant, you got a couple legs that are a little longer and one that's shorter. It definitely takes some time. But if you're in a blind or something and you have that thing set up, it's got a swivel head on it too.
Yeah.
So yeah,
when we first saw the whitetails, the one that we eventually ended up getting, we were walking on the gas line, and Kelly had his tripod, and he fucking threw this thing out like a ninja, man. Like right in front of me, dropped it down, had it perfectly set. I don't even know where it came from. It was all of a sudden just right in front of me. He set it all up for me.
Yeah.
But I guess we were on a flat surface, so we kind of had an advantage that way. But you got that thing out in no time. It was insane how fast you whipped that out. But
yeah, I think it was probably, I had it set up anyways, because I was kind of expecting something to be there. But yeah, just throw it down. I must not have had the Velcro.
I don't know.
I didn't have it all wrapped up, but
Didn't get to take a shot with it, but
no.
yeah. And if I was able to take a shot with that thing, it would have been like night and day compared to
I
with
bet.
the monopod. But yeah, pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you want to go over? We still got some time here.
Yeah, I'd like to. I'd be curious to hear kind of what your guys is. I get, like I said, maybe it's a goal for next year, or how you would implement learnings from last year to next year. That'd be something I'm curious about. Like I know I got my ideas, but
Well, we're already thinking about doing a bear hunt because
yeah?
April's coming up pretty quick here.
Mm-hmm.
And we're both, especially from doing this podcast, because now that we're talking about hunting, we're constantly reading articles all the time. Like we're just itching to get back out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's going to be the first thing that we're getting prepared for.
Yeah, and that's going to be a bunch of firsts as well.
Definitely.
So
I'm sure there'll be some good stories from this.
Yeah,
adventure,
I mean, I'm
but-
sure we'll be able to apply some things. But the thing, what I keep thinking about over the last couple seasons is concentrating the time and effort to the areas where deer are.
yeah,
Because I mean, I know we did a backpacking trip last year, and amazing country. One thing I noticed was there's not very much water, and if there's no water, then there might not be a whole lot of animals around. That's kind of been, I've been thinking about that a little bit, but just really talking to locals, looking at forums, trying to find like big areas where, in general, deer are, and maybe focusing trips, like maybe 3-4 day, maybe 1 week, 2 week trips in those areas, instead of like a night here and a day there and a morning here, just local.
yeah.
But kind of doing more trips like that. So
I think the biggest thing I learned from being in the park last year was that we're going to be better off to sort of hike into an area and then camp there, because what we found, we were telling you before we started, that we were doing like these 20-kilometer hikes. So by the time that we got into the areas where we knew the deer were, it was midday. So we were seeing sign all over the place, but by that point, all the deer had moved on, and
Right.
who knows where they were. But they were likely coming through there in the morning and probably in the evening as well. So we'd get there midday when nothing's really moving around, and then having to sort of head back to camp not too long after that.
yeah.
So I think if we'd be able to, again, like Kel said, dedicate a week to being somewhere, hiking in and getting to the spot basically where the deer are going to be, and that's where you're set up and ready to go. So when you get up in the morning, you only have to walk like a kilometer and you're already like good to go. And you know
Yeah.
that stuff's going to be there because we wasted so much time.
And those days are so short too.
Yeah.
I mean, the sun doesn't come up till 7 and it goes down at 4. Right?
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
So yeah, when you're going that far, you're kind of always just watching the time and thinking about that rather than focusing your efforts on
Yeah.
that. Not that that trip was a waste or anything like that, because we got to know the area pretty well, but our odds were not good the way we were sort of approaching that.
Yeah. And a lot of it is luck too, right? It's probability, and the only way you can maximize that is if you put yourself in the situation. So if that means like getting up earlier, hiking in the dark, and then being there as the sun comes up, or like doing that extra little bit of detail.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to the details and working as hard as possible to give you the greatest percentage of a chance. And the more time I spend hunting, the more time I realize that like it's that little extra that will probably get you that deer in terms of like time,
yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, the odds seem to be really stacked against you.
Yeah.
So the more you can do to increase that, even by 1% or whatever.
Yeah. And I guess that's where it kind of ties into what I was saying with maybe concentrating the time into trips rather than
Yeah.
like one like day here and a day there, because at least with the trips, like you say, you can hike into a spot and you can set yourself up to maximize that time and increase your percentages. But
Yeah.
I guess
One of the main things beyond getting a bear that I'm kind of looking forward to is going out in the spring here to new areas, because we're not going to be in the same areas that we've been looking for deer. But I think in the process of bear hunting, we're going to find new areas and be seeing deer and maybe moose or elk or whatever we come across.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll just sort of give us an excuse to be out and scouting out new areas at the same time that we're doing that. So
for sure.
again, I think the bear hunt is more of an excuse to be outside walking around with a rifle, but
Yeah,
there's going to be a lot of advantages to being out there earlier on in the season too.
Yeah,
I
that's a
imagine
good point.
too, like, you know, hunting in the spring, yeah, it's probably a lot nicer than hunting in November. It's
Yeah.
freezing and and snowy, but
Yeah.
kind of like that September, early October hunting is a lot nicer than November too. And but yeah, that's cool. Like that'll be. I'm excited to hear how that works out for you guys.
You're welcome to join us if you want to come out.
I don't know if I'm totally smitten on hunting a bear. Like
Kelly and I, we've been going back and forth on this thing for, well, last year we talked about it for the same reason. We were just like antsy to be getting out there again. And I wasn't really into it because there's just the thought of like trichinosis and like bear meat that doesn't taste good and stuff like that. But the more we've read about it, the more we've sort of leaned towards actually doing it, because it sounds like if you're going after a bear in the spring when their diet's been basically berries and clover and stuff like that, the meat is going to be fantastic.
yeah, I've heard for me, it doesn't really have as much to do about the meat, other than I just find them really, not that deer and moose aren't like cool creatures, but if you've ever had the chance to just kind of watch them for a few minutes,
cool, yeah.
they are pretty cool. Like I remember, you know, it was in season last fall, and this big bear just sitting under a tree on his ass, just twiddling his thumbs almost. Like it was a cool thing to watch, and I just don't know. It'd be hard. Like I know there is a surplus of them, right?
Yeah.
So, it'd be.
That's the other thing that
we
Kelly and I
watched
have
a
been.
couple.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We saw a big one in the park. Actually, that was probably the biggest black bear I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And then we saw Sal and two cubs in there as well. But yeah, what I was going to say was that one of the things that Kelly and I have been talking about quite a bit is just like conservation. So like that kind of comes into it because, like you said, there is a surplus of bears. So it is sort of, when you get into hunting, part of your responsibility is to help with the conservation efforts. So, you know, if it helps the population to take a few of them out or whatever, then I guess that's part of it. But I totally hear what you say is like they are pretty cool animals, especially when you see them like sort of goofing around and rolling around and stuff like that. They're pretty interesting to watch. But if it's good meat in your freezer too, then it's
and I don't have I don't, you know, judge people that do. I'm sure at one point in my life I think I'd be interested to do it. I just I'm not there yet, I don't think. Although I have had some bear sausages and they're like, you know, unbelievable, and they do some really good hams actually. I've heard those are really good too, so
Nice.
But
we'll see what actually happens when Kelly and I come across a bear. It could be a totally different story. Who knows?
But
I
that's
think
what we've been reading a lot about too, is like we've been reading more and more about the recipes and people saying that it's really good meat. And I got guys at work saying, yeah, we're going for a bear this year and this is why. And like you said, it's a good reason to get out there and scout. Another thing that we probably didn't do a whole lot of in previous seasons. Yeah.
And mainly because that area that we were going to, we got a deer in there, and like I think it is a convenient spot to go to. But last year there just seemed to be so many guys in there, and that's what I want to get away from. Like I liked when we were in the park and we didn't see anybody the whole time that we were out there, so if we can get to more areas that are like that, it's going to be good.
I think you'd have success though. I mean, pretty easy animals to spot, right? I
Yeah.
mean, they stand out a lot more than a deer, say, does. But
Yeah. Yeah, and we hear that clover, open fields, south-facing slopes, that kind of stuff is kind of where they like to hang out in the spring.
Kelly started a thread. You should send him the link to it.
Yeah.
Is it BC Hunting? Is that what's the website?
Yeah, it's on the BC Hunting Forum. I'll send you the link, but I basically sent out a message asking for assistance, like first time hunting black bear. And within a few days, it was just a 4-page thread, and every response was basically right on.
oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
so,
awesome. Hey, the community is helping out with that.
Yeah.
Like,
For sure. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to getting out there. We're also talking about fly fishing kicking up this year too. So maybe like
you might be able
fly
to
fishing
coordinate
at
the
bear
two of
trip.
it together. Really,
Yeah.
I mean,
So
that's most of the bears I've seen in my life have been out when I was fishing younger or
yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
on the shoreline or whatever.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah, I mean, I have thought about the bear hunt, and you know, my wife and I are expecting a son, so I always thought it'd be kind of cool to have a bear rug in the baby room.
yeah.
What are her thoughts on that one?
I haven't asked her.
We'll give you the rug if we get one.
Yeah. We'll keep you posted. Maybe you'll change your mind by the time the hunt rolls around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
I-
it's funny. Like my cousin, her and her husband, like they do it religiously. They love it, and I think they love the meat. I think they, it is an animal where you can take the hide and you can take the meat, and so it is really getting used, all of it for the most part.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't think people are doing it as just so much of like a game hunt as they are a meat and hide hunt or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's when you get into the whole grizzly bear hunt where it's a different story.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really interested in that one. But one of the things you mentioned, nice spring weather, but one of the things that came up quite a few times in that thread was that you have to be really quick if you're going to be hunting in the spring, because they're heavy suckers, and to drag
Yeah.
them around is almost
Temperature.
impossible. So if it's getting hot and you've got a bunch
Oh
of
yeah.
meat, and some of the tips were to hang it up, like if there's a bridge or anything going over a creek or anywhere near water, if you can hang it up in a tree next to a creek, it'll at least keep it
Yeah.
cool enough for the time being. But I think based on what I read, nobody outright said that they had spoiled meat, but it sounds like it's probably happened to a few of those guys, because it's, especially if you shot something midday and you got to be fast, and that would be a bummer
Mhm.
to shoot a bear.
Yeah,
and
no kidding.
waste it. That would be the worst thing ever. But
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Have you guys
Well-
looked into like a game cart at all?
No.
no,
I haven't used one personally, but my dad swears by it.
oh really?
He uses it, in the hiking trails where you park your truck in at the bottom.
Yeah.
A lot of times, if he's doing like a weekend hunt, he'll hide it amongst some trees or whatever, and he swears by it. Like he says it, that thing will pull you down the trail if it's one of those hike ups. So yeah, it'd be worth looking into, I think, especially if you're going to spots where you're hiking in versus driving.
Yeah. Is it like is he packing it in or is he dragging it in?
Yeah. What is it? What's the setup look like?
It's almost like a rickshaw, like
Oh, yeah.
a small rickshaw, where you walk it in behind you, and like I said, he'll put it in kind of a central spot in the beginning of the day, and that way when he shoots it, he can walk it back and then cart it out, rather than I don't know if you quarter or whatever, and
Put it in there with the
yeah,
seatbelt.
he swears by it. He used to use one of those like the little kid carts that you put behind the bike. It's a similar concept, but with like a rickshaw where you can put the handles above your hips and just walk it out.
We should look into that, because that's something that I was thinking about, especially if we're going to hike in camp. And like you said, there's nowhere to get water from. So I was thinking about it'd be cool to have something where we could drag in a big jug of water. So at least that would keep us going for 4 or 5 days or something like that. So if you had something like that where you could use it on the way in, And then, if you got something, obviously you can just dump out all your water and have an empty jug to bring back, but at least you could have like a dual purpose for it so that you're
Yeah,
using
that's
it on
true.
the way in and that, because that's the one thing that when I think about hiking in into the park there is water, and what the hell are we going to do for that? I don't want to be using the life straw in puddles the whole time we're out there.
No. Yeah, that whole area, like I love it for what it is, but for hunting, I wonder if that's the place we should be spending our trip. I don't know, because one, there's no water for us, and I wonder if there's any water for the animals. I'm sure there are the lakes, and they can travel so far, right?
Well, what Landon figured out, because they came in from the lake and hiked in,
Yeah.
that the deer were all coming down to the lake in the morning, but they were having the same problem because they were camped by the lake. By the time they were heading up in the dark, the deer were actually heading up at the same time. So it's like that one area that we got into on the second day that we were hiking. Basically, that's where I think we need to be camped out so that when we get up, we're already sort of in the right spot, because there was so much sign we saw elk and moose and deer sign in there all over the place, but we didn't see any deer, but it was all super fresh. So I think it's timing, but maybe what it would take is just heading there in your boat one day, even before the season starts, and just trying that out and see if we can get up there at a certain time, if they're actually hanging out or not.
For sure.
But I hear you, because that's a lot of work to get in there.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just, I know we're in BC, right? So there's a lot of other places.
Yeah.
It's just, I'd love to have everything work out there. I think it would be more meaningful to have it work out there.
Yeah.
And it would also, it would be cool to have that as like a honey hole that we could always go back to, right? But there are other areas. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's still early. Like we'll be 2.5 seasons in next year. So I think we should give it another shot. And
I think there'll be a lot of spots opening up just with all the fires. Like that's when the specific spot you guys are talking about became really good, was post fires, because of I think there's a lot of protein and for feeding and stuff that makes it beneficial.
All the underbrush that comes back up.
Yeah, and as well, I think one of the big thing for hunting was just visibility.
You can see forever.
Yeah, you can just see forever. So I think with the fires that we had this past year, this upcoming season might be pretty bountiful, just because of it in the Rock Creek area. And
that is an area that I like to head out to, is Rock Creek area.
I think it's
Christian
a spot where you do camp overnight, because it's a jaunt, right?
Yeah.
A lot of gas. And
What have you got planned for this year?
I haven't given it a whole ton of thought. Like I think I'll be spending less efforts in early September, just hoping for that 4-point and investing those days into October, when you can, shoot a whitetail, doe, and any buck.
Yeah.
When you're we'll be having a kid soon, so I think I'll be those opportunities will be a little fewer. So I think I'll invest those times in the October weeks, and then you never know. Hopefully, you get an LEH draw somewhere along the way. But
have you got something in mind that you're going to put in for in particular?
I'd really like to go for an elk in the Fernie region, just because I got family out there, and my father-in-law lives out there, knows some of the country quite well, so it'd be easy for him to take me out for a few days. I'd hope, but other than that, just some of the moose draws, I think, and stuff like that. How about you guys?
Cool.
More of the same. Yeah, I've got a cabin up in the Caribou region, so we're gonna put in for a group hunt, I think, for a moose again this year. We put in last year.
No luck.
No luck.
No, and I think one of the things we learned too was that, like, I think we only put in for that, but maybe we should put in for a few more things.
Yeah, because we didn't
for the moose one, or for just in general, like other species.
Other species, yeah.
Oh, you just did the one moose, and then that was it?
No, I put in for I can't remember what it was.
I put in a muley doe.
Yeah,
local.
I think I did the same.
but that was it.
Yeah, I didn't put in for an elk or anything like that, which we
No.
probably should have done. Or so. Yeah, I think you might as well, again, because your odds aren't that great depending on what you're going for and where and what time of year. You might as well put in for a bunch of things. And like you said, at least that you feel like you're wasting money, but it's going somewhere and it's going towards
Mhm.
Oh, it's $5,
conservation. So
I think, isn't it?
Yeah,
Or-
it's $5 each LEH, I think.
yeah, I guess it depends because you have
Yeah.
to get your species license for it as well.
Yeah.
So whatever a moose tag is on top
Yeah.
of that. But yeah, so it's not a considerable amount of money or anything like that. So you might
Yeah.
as well just
yeah.
go for it and whatever, you might get lucky. So
I think our major goal this year is to get an elk,
yeah, I think so.
which
And I'm not
maybe
really
in the
sure where.
Kootenays.
Yeah.
I'm still working on that. My father-in-law is a huge hunter. I don't even know how many elk and mule deer and everything else he's got. But he knows where they are, so I'm kind of trying to plan something with him, and maybe we can get an elk this year.
That'd be good. I think that's the main thing is to get like a bigger animal in the freezer because a white-tailed doe, as we found out, doesn't last that long.
Yeah.
Even though
well, and that'd be
it's
maybe
great.
the trip to spend a week on, right? And
Yeah,
more so than like a deer hunt.
exactly.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I think the deer hunts are day trips, and then those bigger ones are the week.
Yeah, unless you're going for like a alpine mule hunt or something, muley deer. I don't know.
Yeah. We went out for the Kootenays for those it was just a weekend, but everyone got their 2 deer. It was awesome. It was except for me, I guess. But you live and learn.
Yeah. Yeah, I went out for a deer hunt with my father-in-law last year, and we didn't get anything, but I did see about 30 elk. It
Wow.
wasn't elk season anymore,
Of course.
but
yeah.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes.
yeah, I mean, I hadn't planned to do an elk hunt with them last year, so it's fine. But now that I've been out there and I've seen them, I think that's the top of my list. So
Definitely.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I lived in Fernie for a year, and we would see them in fields. Every time we drove past a farmer, like they were just everywhere. But I think about it now, and I guarantee they weren't in season. So they're pretty
I think
stealthy guys.
the key in those areas is to actually know a farmer and get permission to hunt on their property. Because that's what I hear. A lot of guys who get elk, they're getting permission to hunt on someone's property, which doesn't sound good. But these guys have like huge acreages, right?
Oh,
So it's not like
and
you're,
they're pests, right?
yeah, exactly.
They-
And it might not be as rewarding, but oftentimes it sounds like you can basically look at your watch and know when they're going to come in each evening. So some of these guys I've talked to, it's like they're guaranteed to get something. It's just a matter of kind of hanging out there for a few days and waiting for them
Yeah.
to come in, which I wouldn't feel bad.
no,
No.
it's
You know what I
still
mean?
it's still getting organic meat,
Yeah.
right? And that's the whole point.
Yeah,
It's more honorable than going to the store at the end of the
yeah,
day.
exactly.
Oh,
So
I wouldn't feel guilty about it at all. I mean,
No.
yeah, it's less rewarding, I guess, and
You
the
can
hunts
still
you
go do
talk
those
about.
other hunts anyways, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? At least
Yeah.
you get something big and then you can go out, have fun looking for deer on top of that. But
Yeah.
yeah. Cool. Well, any advice you would give to other rookie hunters like ourselves? If you could sum it up, your first 2 years or the main.
yeah, for sure. I think advice I would give is just patience. I mean, it's funny. I know initially taking that core course and hearing all the stories from my brother-in-law and their friends, and you always hear about the ones they shoot. You never hear about all the days they spent where
Right.
they didn't get anything. So my expectation, the first year was that you're automatically going to get something. And there was a lot of days where, you're coming home dejected and,
Yeah.
you feel bad, but because you didn't get anything, but you know, it was a lot of fun getting outside and doing those types of things. So I think that would be the biggest thing is having realistic expectations and just enjoying the outdoors and you know, appreciating that versus just expecting to shoot something. But
I remember feeling, it was only in the first season where I would come home feeling frustrated.
yeah,
I didn't have that in the second season because I felt like we were actually making progress, whereas the first season was kind of like a shot in the dark, basically, like no idea what we're doing. And again, you expect like you are going to go out and see stuff every day, or you're going to get something, and then you keep going out and you keep, you know, missing opportunities, or you don't see anything or whatever. And you're just like, what the fuck am I doing this for? Like,
you think you're doing something wrong, but it's actually just the way it is.
yeah.
So, yeah, that's a good point. Take your time. Don't give up.
Yeah, I mean, just enjoy what it is a opportunity to get out with your buddies. I mean, those are the best days, I find, like when, you know, there's been times where I do some solo truck hunting, and it sucks. Like, I don't really enjoy it, and it literally was a meat hunt, basically. It's just to try and fill a little bit more in the freezer, and if a buddy was there, it'd be that much more enjoyable. So just enjoy the camaraderie of it.
Yeah, our trip, that was probably the best part of it, was like just hanging out at the end of the day and drinking some beer, and we brought so much food with us, and just like it was incredible. Like that was the highlight of it, was just basically the campfire at the end of the day.
Yeah. And they say you should continue hunting the whole time. Like whether you're hiking out or hiking back or you're almost at the truck, just keep hunting, because you don't know when that thing's going to come out of the bush, right? But for me, it was kind of like at a certain stage, I almost just put the rifle back in the back, and I'm like, whatever, we're 2 hours out. I'm just thinking about dinner at this point. That's how much food we had, and the food was so good. Like, I could have just stayed out there for a couple weeks
Just
if we had unlimited food. But yeah, the amount of effort you put into those trips, we didn't get anything, but at the end of the day, it's still, I would do it again with the exact same outcome every year.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we can wrap this thing up unless there's anything else.
No, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. And yeah, I guess we'll be back. Kel, I don't know if we've been doing this weekly now, so this is the fourth one, and they've come out every week, but we might switch to bi-weekly or something like that every 2 weeks here. So it just depends. And then once we get more into hunting season, maybe things will change a little bit, but
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I don't know how long we can bullshit for.
It's a little tough when there's no open seasons, right?
Yeah.
You can only talk about so much, but I'm sure with the bear hunt coming up, and it'll start picking up, especially with fishing season too. We're going to talk a lot about fishing.
Cool.
We're kind of rookie fly fishers as well. So
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes, but
There's the one that for a rookie is hard. Fishing,
It
I
is.
find. Just because, you know, it's, you know, they're down there, but you can't see them, and you're just hoping they bite.
yeah, lots of reading. It's so cool now with the internet. Like if you think about our grandparents, it was kind of all based on who you knew and who had the knowledge, and you kind of grow into it with these people. But nowadays, I mean, there's nothing that can supplement that fully, but with the internet, you can learn pretty much to do anything, or at least get started.
Yeah.
And then once you're out there, hopefully there's some guys that'll help you out a little bit. But
I think, in the good old days, these guys were brought up hunting and fishing from when they were little kids, but hunting isn't as common these days now. So when guys like us that are,
it's thriving again. Actually, there's tons of people, or like the license renewals are up a ton, and it's really coming back full.
That's what's cool about it too. And now that guys like us are getting into it at 30 years old or whatever, but we've got the advantage, like you said, of having YouTube and all that shit. If we don't have somebody to show us how to get
it's hilarious. Like, I mean, people I didn't expect to have licenses do, and you look at, you look at all of our kind of backgrounds. I mean, it's not a redneck thing anymore.
No.
Like it's
No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's
cool.
almost like going to the grocery store, right? It's just that people think a lot more about their food. I think the hunters are thinking a lot more about their food, and that's one of the reasons they go out there. But you're right. As soon as I started hunting, I started paying more attention to those people and the people at work. And I had no idea that all these people that I see at work that I never would have guessed they were hunters.
Right.
Just, I mean, you try, you're not going to judge people, but just based on what they wear and like what jobs they have and what they drive and all this stuff. And then you find out that they're hand loading on their days off and, going out to the range whenever they can. And it's cool. It's like, there's definitely camaraderie with your buddies, but there's also like a big network out there that's actually bigger than you think.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you can, take advantage of those things, because you can obviously learn a lot from other people if they're willing to share their knowledge with you.
Yeah.
But,
oh man, the older generation's awesome because I don't think they saw that with their younger buddies. So, because I think there was a big lapse where it wasn't as popular.
right.
Yeah.
So they're like the best guys to hear from because they're just excited to have someone to share it with again.
For
I
sure.
think.
For sure.
Cool.
I think you mentioned that last episode, like anybody that we know that wants to get into it, it would be exciting for us to show people.
Oh,
as
yeah.
well. It's just
More than
kind of
happy
fun to teach. Not that we have a ton of knowledge in the subject we're learning too, but we do know enough to get people kick-started just the
For
way
sure.
we did. So
Yeah.
I can see where they get that from.
Well, I think that's a good one to end on. Yeah, like I said, we're on iTunes and Stitcher Radio and all that kind of shit. So if people can help us out by leaving a rating, a review, that's super helpful. So Cory, when you go home, go on and
I can't wait to listen to the first couple episodes.
let us
And
know.
sorry
what
I
you think.
hadn't. I'm not very tech savvy. So
No, that's all right. Anyways, they're out there, and hopefully people are getting something out of this. And even if they're not, it's still fun to just have an excuse to get together like this and drink some beer and hang out for a bit. So,
For sure.
anyways, we'll be back, I guess, in a couple of weeks. Thanks for hanging out.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.